Hello and welcome to In the Dugout and to the 15th episode of the Dugout Debate. My name is Josh and as usual I'm joined by my significant others, also known as Chris and Alex.
This is what marriage has now become.
I mean, sometimes I'll call my fellow presenters partisans and pundits and pals, but,
To a certain extent.
they've added an extra 2 colours to the LGBT flag, so I thought it was unfitting.
Josh, I'm
But
not
anyway,
gonna lie, let's be honest. If I voted for a different party than you at a general election, we would not have a long-lasting marriage.
opposites attract. But anyway, as always, we're going to start with our picture of the week, a round called Picture This, and, well, there isn't much to say really, apart from a Man City player signing his new contract. I will reveal all later on. But what could be going on in this picture?
Do you want to start us off, Alex?
No, I'm alright, you can go.
Okay. Has he just arrived? Has this player just arrived at the dentist to have his braces removed?
What, and he's signing a contract to allow that to happen?
He's signing the bill. He's over the age of 18 now. He has to pay.
See, to me it looks like that might be a cartel member signing his release forms.
I'm just going to look past the player and the man beside him. I'm just going to look at, after purchasing this player, can Man City no longer afford chairs, so they've had to make some makeshift ones out of the curtain blinds?
To me it looks like, he kind of looks like he's doing one of those fake smiles, you know, the ones that you kind of make when you, like, know you're going to be the next Willie Caballero, regardless of how poorly you
Always good to be the next Willie.
Well, we all love to be good.
No, we all remember our first Willie.
Chelsea. There's talk of Willie moving to Chelsea, so
Yeah,
he's going to be.
we're gonna come on to that.
No, he's just.
No, that's true.
Willie.
Oh, right.
What, Free Willie?
Right. Any other episodes?
No, this is Edison signing a professional contract with Man City.
That is correct, but I won't really talk about Edison too much. I would like to talk about the goalkeeping situation at City as a whole, and obviously when Guardiola took over the reins at the Etihad last summer, they had England's number one Joe Hart, who looked to be losing his place not only at City, where he went to Torino, but also at England. He brought in Claudio Bravo from Barcelona, who had, I think it's fair to say, a bit of a shocker of a debut season in England. He's letting Willie Caballero, well, he's released him. As you said, Chris is talking of going to Chelsea. He's brought in Edison. So what is Guardiola trying to do with this goalkeeping situation? Is he going to sign another keeper next summer if Edison has a bit of a mare this season? What's going on?
It's difficult to say with that, but it's really odd, to be honest, because with every other area of the field, you can kind of understand what he's doing, at least what he's trying to do when he's making signings. I mean, as much as John Stones may not have ended up being a good signing at all, obviously still could do bits in the future, but at the moment it's not particularly likely. You can understand what Guardiola's been trying to do, but with his goalkeeping position, he signed Claudio Bravo for his footwork when he's a goalkeeper, which is still something I can't really get my head around. I mean, I kind of understand not playing Joe Hart, because Joe Hart's very injury prone, and Edison's largely unproven, but I wouldn't judge Edison too early because he is a Benfica product, and we've seen plenty of successful Benfica products in the past, like Angel Di Maria, obviously not so much at Manchester United, but elsewhere. David Luiz, Benfica product, and has had a very successful career, so I wouldn't sleep on him too early. He's a very young goalkeeper, and he's done a good job in the Portuguese league last season, so I personally, in Guardiola's position, would have signed an experienced goalkeeper, but remains to be seen. He could do a good job.
And obviously another thing that Guardiola has done in his time at City, more so this summer than last summer, is sort of go through an exodus of the experienced players at City. I spoke about Caballero, also Jesus Navas, who's I think 32, and then Zabaleta, Sanya, Clichy, all been allowed to leave this summer. Or with sort of only Yaya Toure that comes to mind, and David Silva to an extent that come across as the immediate ones with experience. Is that going to prove detrimental to City's season?
I personally don't think so, because I spoke a bit in a previous episode about how I felt that at the start of this coming season, Pep would be starting to truly implement his changes, because the sides that he built, particularly at Barcelona, it was a young side with quick tiki-taka style play. And a lot of that City team were aging, the likes of all these players who've now gone on and left. And you look at some of the players who he's been bringing in who are much younger, like Bernardo Silva from Monaco. All these sort of players fit the Pep Guardiola mould of quick, aggressive, keep possession, and get the goals from that. So, obviously, the goalkeeping situation is probably the more evident issue here, because I believe it was the fact that Joe Hart wasn't good with his feet that prompted Pep to loan him out to Torino and then bringing in Claudio Bravo. Unfortunately, Bravo may be a keeper who can use his feet, but he can't use his hands, which is kind of important.
Yeah, kind of a point, really, isn't it?
Are you done?
Yes.
You just gotta stop talking.
All right, so sticking
Round
with
off with the quick insult at the Chilean supposed shot stopper.
transfers, but moving across Manchester to Old Trafford. This evening, the news has just broken that Victor Lindelof has signed for Manchester United for a fee of around £31 million.
Another big player.
Indeed. With De Gea looking ever more likely to stay at Old Trafford, with Eric Bailly, with Rojo and Blind having very good seasons, with Luke Shaw maybe showing signs of improving as last season progressed, with also Jones and Smalling thrown into the mix, do Manchester United potentially have the makings of the league's best defence?
I would personally be inclined to say it's up there, but I would personally say that, in my opinion, just in terms of depth and in terms of consistency across the whole back line, I would say not quite up on level with the likes of Chelsea and Spurs yet, because, I mean, Chelsea have showed last season that they've managed to achieve a level of consistency across an entire back five. That entire back five is, well, at least last season played well and looks to be strong players, and you can say the same for Spurs. The entire starting back four that they have is very strong. I would say, arguably, if United sign Lindelof, they have possibly the best centre-back partnership if Bailly can stay fit and Lindelof shows to be worth the potential that he has. But as much as I rate Valencia as a right-back, I still don't think you have a particularly strong left-back option at the moment. But one thing that is interesting to note about Lindelof, Josh, you may well have seen this because I know you follow, obviously, United transfer news very closely. Did you see what Lewandowski said about him?
I haven't, no. I've seen what Zlatan said.
Lewandowski was speaking about going up against him and who's the other Benfica centre-back? Luis Sal, I think, is the other one that usually starts, and said that in the Champions League last season, they were arguably the best centre-back partnership he went up against. So, highly praised from one of the best strikers in the world. So, if I were a United fan, I'd be very excited about him.
If he's anything near as good as the last Swedish person you had join your team, you should be fine. I mean, of course, that's obviously at other ends of the pitch, but that's beside the point.
Sticking with United for a second, Alvaro Murata, I mean, it seems like he's the second choice striker for United behind Antoine Griezmann, who's decided to stay at Atletico after their transfer embargo. Is he the man that United need at the moment? I mean, last time United signed a Real reject, Angel Di Maria, didn't work out too well for them. So, could Murata prove to be the final piece of the jigsaw for this team that Mourinho needs to build, especially with Zlatan now having left the club? Or do you think that United should have been looking elsewhere?
I think you definitely needed a striker, but perhaps Murata wasn't the best one to go for at this moment, because he's still relatively young, and like you said, he's not really been breaking into that Real Madrid team. Am I right that he was Juventus in between his two spells?
Yeah.
He did pretty well with Juve, but again, the Italian league is pretty much nowhere near in comparison competitively to the Prem, especially if you're with the old lady. Speaking of them, I heard you were also in for Perisic, but I think he's been playing more as a left wing at the moment.
Yeah, Perisic is a left mid.
perhaps not the position you need improving. But
No, not really.
In terms of Murata, I think it's worth noting that I personally can't say a lot about him because I don't watch a huge amount of the Serie A or La Liga to that much extent, so I don't know a huge amount about it. But the two things that I do know are the fact that Real Madrid fans have been crying out for him to start over Karim Benzema. So that's just that when he has started, he's done a pretty solid job. And secondly, it's worth noting that obviously Mourinho managed him, I think, at least for a little bit when he was at Real Madrid. So Mourinho wouldn't sign somebody who he didn't think had the quality. If he coached on before and was like, this guy's average, he would not then go and sign them. So I think it's worth noting, if you're a United fan, that if you have any faith in your manager's transfer decisions, then Murata must be a pretty reasonable buy.
That's a fair point. And sticking with Mourinho and one of his former teams, to Chelsea, obviously the news in the last week that Diego Costa was informed by Antonio Conte via text that he basically been made redundant, shall we say.
Basically.
Essentially. Do you think, especially after the 3 years of service that Costa's given Chelsea, in which he's been the club's top scorer in each of the 3 seasons, including 2 title-winning campaigns, do you think that it's both unfair and disrespectful of Conte to not only oust Costa, maybe he doesn't feel like he fits in with the team, I don't know, but also to do it in the way that he did?
I think you never know what goes on behind the scenes. Diego Costa is a difficult character. We all know that. I think it was personally extremely disrespectful, especially considering what you've said. Diego Costa, you can say he doesn't fit in with the team. The guy's a 20, 25 goal a season striker if you play him regularly and he doesn't get injured, which is rare, especially in the Premier League. Like, the Premier League is a tough league, especially physically, and Costa's style of play suits that down to a T. So in order for him to be let go like that, or let go at all, there must be something going on behind the scenes. I don't believe that Chelsea have just gone, yeah, we don't want this 25 goal a season striker anymore, because as well as Lukaku has done at Everton, Lukaku is inconsistent. I saw highlights of his game that he played for Belgium a couple of weeks ago, and his touch was all over the place. He had a couple of one-on-ones that he put straight at the goalkeeper, and a lot of his goals, you've got to bear in mind, for Everton came when Everton were already 2 or 3-0 up. The other team were chucking men forward. Lukaku scored 2 in the last 5 minutes to just sort of see off the game anyway. So my assumption is there must have been something going on behind the scenes, because that's the only explanation I can think of for getting rid of a player that's that consistent.
I feel like this is probably something to do with that supposed apparent bust-up that happened back in January, and then there was all the talk of him going off to China. So perhaps Conte may just still be a bit bitter about that, or, like Alex said, there may have been something else happening behind the scenes, because Costa could easily waltz into any team in one of the top 5 European leagues.
Yeah.
So and after the 3 seasons he's had at Chelsea, I just can't understand for the life of me why they let him go in the way that they did.
Sticking with you, Chris, who do you think Chelsea will look to as a replacement?
Well, Lukaku's the one that's been touted with making a return to the bridge, but like Alex said, when he's been the sole focus of that Everton team to get the goals, he may not be ready to, or if he does go to a big team, he will probably not do as well. I don't think someone like Harry Kane would leave Tottenham because, to quote the fans, he's one of their own.
And he wouldn't leave for Chelsea, wouldn't have thought either.
I heard, I know it's not a like-for-like replacement, but I heard that Chelsea were actually interested in signing Lorenzo Insigne from Napoli, which could be a good choice.
That's supposedly to replace a potential outgoing Hazard, I've heard. I think the 2 other names that I've heard, although interestingly I think I've also heard both these names in connection with Man City, are Andrea Bellotti from Torino.
Yeah, he's meant to be really good.
Young Italian striker, but as far as I know has had, this season's been his big breakout season in Serie A. So obviously, again, that would be something of a risky buy that could turn out very well. The other one I've heard, and it's interesting you say Harry Kane wouldn't move because it's, a London move. I've heard Alexis Sanchez being linked to Chelsea, and again, also linked to Manchester City. And
I can see that. But I think the thing with Harry Kane, he's, from a Tottenham fan, he's a local boy. But Sanchez has just come from Chile. He's been at Barcelona. So
I think
he's...
Kane was an Arsenal fan, wasn't he?
He was.
Oh, was
He
he?
was.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I feel
Scrap
like,
that then.
If a new striker for Chelsea is going to come from anywhere, he'll come from Serie A because Conte knows that league like the back of his hand. So I'd probably say Belotti would be out of the team, the players we've mentioned, the ones like at the top of that list to most likely move.
Belotti for 45 mil, you heard it first.
Make sure you reference us. But moving on, moving on to our number of the week, which is 51. So, dear boys, what does number 51 represent?
Is it in the average game of CS:GO? How many 12-year-old Russian kids claim to have slept with your mum?
I don't know what CS:GO is.
It's like COD, Josh. Replace CS:GO with
Oh,
COD.
okay. Okay. You, what are you like?
Is 51 the number of decent centre-backs Liverpool are going to approach before we eventually sign Jonas Olsen from West Brom?
Or he signed Kerno Torre.
Damn it, I've been deals.
He went back to Sweden.
Or maybe Julian Lescott will sign for you, you'll get relegated.
Oh, yes.
We can dream.
It's a weight off the shoulders. Is it how many miles below sea level will Norwich be in 2030?
Yes, so my first question is...
Is 51 the percentage number necessary for a Prime Minister to make an alliance with homophobic creationists?
Oh!
Ooh. This is what I was scared of.
What I can say, she's still Prime Minister. Jeremy Corbyn... Let's just say, Theresa May had the worst campaign in history. Jeremy Corbyn had a very good campaign, and she still beat him. So I think that says quite a lot.
Sticking with...
It burns in the wheat field, alright?
Sticking with the political theme, is it in pounds? What would Diane Abbott set the yearly salary of Labour MPs to be?
Is this going to be like every week there's a Diane Abbott joke for the rest of the time?
The actual answer is, in what year does Diane Abbott think the world's going to end? So...
What year is it, Diane? 51.
Or in what year do DUP members think Jesus died?
Now, if there's anything they're actually experts on, it probably is creation.
Or is it in what year BC are Tim Farron's beliefs rooted? I can't. I'm not allowed to play the game, but anyway, what is the actual answer?
Is it how often in seconds does Paul Gascoigne wake up?
That isn't the actual answer, no.
Is it the number of years that England went without actually winning an international trophy, ending this week? Hallelujah.
Correct, Alex. 1-0.
Yes.
Against Venezuela.
Yeah, so yes, obviously, the weekend did see England, for the first time since the glorious 1966 World Cup triumph, take home an international trophy, namely the Under-20s World Cup, in South Korea. My first question, though, is to you, Alex. Are we looking at the future winners of the World Cup proper?
Absolutely not. I will elaborate on that a little bit. It's great. We have some under-20 players who are quite talented, perhaps more talented than the crops of under-20 players from like a bunch of other countries, such as Venezuela. And Venezuela got to the final as well. Now, let's think about those Venezuelan players. Are they going to actually get game time in Venezuela? Absolutely. It's the Venezuelan league. Are any of those under-20 players realistically going to get game time in England? The likelihood is the majority of them won't. And therefore, we might be better than some of the other teams now, but give it 3 years' time when a bunch of the other teams have actually let their players play games, and they'll be better than us.
Well,
it's the main problem. We don't actually play any of our young players, and the young players that we do play, we ruin, because as soon as they have 2 or 3 good games, we go, oh, you've been good, let's sign you up for 50 mil for one of the top 3 clubs. Like, it's ridiculous.
That kind of leads you on to my next question, Chris.
I call it Theo Walcott syndrome.
Okay. Chris, do you think that the Premier League managers will take on board, sort of slightly disregarding, slightly hearing what Alex is saying, in that they're going to look at these young players and help them through the ranks and break out into the first team? Or are we still just going to see this ever-growing influx of foreign players, and therefore, same old story with England, we'll get to like the group stage or the quarters, and then that'll be it?
I think it depends on a number of factors, because if you look at, it depends on the teams for one. So if you look at a team like Southampton, where they've got an incredible youth system and they promote their youth a lot more than a lot of other clubs. Even Villa can fall into that bracket to some extent. And then they get these bigger money moves to bigger teams, which I'll retract the Theo Walcott syndrome comment because he's still a prospect.
So is Moussa Dembele. Never let it go.
Yeah.
Never let it go.
No, it's not good. But if these players have clearly proven that they can win far more silverware than pretty much any other England team from the last more than half a century. So you may as well give them a game. I'm trying to think. Some of the players you've seen in the squad, like Dominic Solanke, who's now moved to Liverpool.
Ballon d'Or winner next year. This year. They got
Ainsley Maitland-Niles played well when he came on. He plays for Arsenal at the moment, I believe. He's been out on loan for a couple of other teams.
What's the name of the goalkeeper? I've totally forgotten his name.
Freddie Woodman.
He had an amazing game.
I feel like
ridiculous.
Rafa's the sort of manager who would take that on board because with Newcastle just coming up, they'll be far more likely to be looking at their youth academy to perhaps bring about some more of these players.
And thankfully, it's not like any young English goalkeepers are going to get signed up or have been recently signed up for a ridiculous fee. Not looking at anyone in particular, Jordan Pickford and Everton.
Yeah. I hear that now Ronald Koeman's having a medical at Everton to try and comprehend that decision.
To be fair, I don't think it's that bad a decision, but I feel like we're derailing Josh's plan for the episode, so...
We'll leave it there.
I think it's probably a good point to move on with...
Conclusion of that topic, England are constantly and will always be awful.
Until I become England's #1 striker, in which case... I'm gonna overcome my 7-year-long knee injury and break through. That's a question for another day. No, you are derailing my plans for the episode.
You conquered the stairs of the K block. You can do anything.
On crutches, might I add.
Yes.
I'll kick off the next part of the episode with a quick question, which is, what happened this morning? What was released this morning?
Was Adam Johnson released from prison?
No, that happened ages ago. Chris, we always make Adam Johnson jokes. Creativity, come on.
What do you mean creativity? You're either making dance jokes or jokes about me having no relationship.
Is that why you've become a nonce?
You're being very creative, which actually leads me on to my answer, which is what's being released this morning. Apparently Chris' official audition to be the next Muse League guitarist.
I don't need it.
That's a good one. If I can incorporate that into the video, I will.
Well.
Yeah.
Bellamy's got a few more years in him, so...
Is that Craig or Matt?
Is it, what was released this morning? Was it Arsene Wenger's sex tape, proving in more than one sense that it doesn't come first?
I never want to imagine that ever again.
Proving in more than one sense he doesn't come first.
We heard it the first time.
Featuring special guest, the Oyston.
Featuring the entire Arsenal fan base because he's effed them over so much.
Brings a whole new meaning to Wenger in.
And Wenger in.
Wenger shake it all about.
In it blood.
What?
In it blood.
Oh, right, come on. What actually was released this morning? Please, for God's sake.
It was the Premier League fixture list.
No, it was actually Arsene Wenger's sex tape. That was the correct answer.
In which case I already answered the question, so why are you asking?
My first question, Chris, is which of the top 6 teams has the best start to the season?
I'd honestly say United, because I'll just get the fixtures up right now, because I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I remember that Man United seemed to have it was about 6 games at the start of the season where you pretty much didn't face any of the main competition. I'll excuse my slow typing. Feel free to talk over me.
Do you want me to come in with this?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. I'm just
come in like Wenger, yeah.
So your first 3 home games, or first 4 home games, in fact, you got West Ham, Leicester, Everton, and Palace, and then your 3 away games sandwiched in between are Swansea, Stoke, and Southampton. So out of those 7 opening games, I'd probably say Everton is your
Yeah.
most considerable threat before you then go on and have the Liverpool-Man United match at Anfield on October the 14th. So I feel like United could probably get some serious fly out the blocks pretty early with those games.
And Alex, do you think, as a Liverpool fan, that the Reds will suffer under the sort of the jam-packed fixture list, given that in the last 2 seasons in which they had European competition, they both failed to make the top 4?
I think it's difficult to say. I think that it's very obvious from, the way that our squad played last season, that there are certain players for whom we don't really have a backup choice. For example, the only player that ever brought any width to our team last season was Sadio Mane, and when he went to the Africa Cup of Nations, we went through a horrific run of form. I think that if we can figure out the places where we do have weakness and depth and sort that out, then we might be okay. Obviously, it's dragging on for ages, but we're currently looking at Mohamed Salah, who would be a good replacement for Mane in that kind of sense. So I think if we can figure that out, then we'll be all right. But that's always a big if. And so far, as much as I like the guy, I've not been convinced by Klopp's transfer policies since he's been here. I know he's only really had one summer, so we'll see. But I think we will actually struggle with the fixture list next year, if I'm being completely honest.
Okay. And moving on completely now to the final round, which is always the dugout debate. This week, after much deliberation, we finally managed to settle on trying to decide...
5 minutes.
It's not the point. Trying to decide which of the Premier League winning players is the worst. You think it's quite simple. I thought the last suggestions were quite simple. Apparently not. But we'll see how it goes. As usual, we'll start with Chris, then proceed to Alex before I then give my pick. So, Chris, who have you gone for?
I've gone for a player whose name you could practically yodel. It's Jeremy Aliadier, and his time
Chris,
at
you can't
Arsenal.
say that and not back up with evidence.
Yeah.
What?
This isn't time for your guitarist. When he yodel.
All right, calm down. He was an Arsenal Academy graduate, and he'd spent
Sorry.
6 years.
Sorry, Chris. Yeah. If you're not gonna yodel.
No, of course I'm not, because I'm not an idiot. That's why.
Oh, sorry. Carry on.
So he was an Arsenal Academy graduate, and he'd spent his first 6 years as a senior player with the Gunners, in which he bagged an astonishing, amazing, breathtaking 1 goal from.
Was it a good goal though?
I don't know, probably not.
Well, someone hasn't done their research.
Yeah, no, I don't, because I prefer to wing it because it's just funnier.
Is that your excuse for the 1953 FA Cup final?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's the funniest thing Chris has ever said.
Look at us now, you're laughing, I win.
No, Leslie Reed wins.
No, Les Reed never wins. We've established that.
He's now director of football at Southampton. He's doing well for himself.
And we've asked him to pass on our regards.
Big up, Les.
Leslie.
But yeah, I just feel that with the amount of time we'd spent with the Gunners, a total of 6 years to produce an almighty 1 goal, I think it was 10 appearances in that Invincibles win a year. I feel like that's just reason enough for him to just be the worst Premier League player to have won the league.
Fair enough argument. Last, who have you gone for?
I've gone for a man who has played for a number of very illustrious clubs. I'm going to list them off to you. You're going to wonder, how does a player not win a Ballon d'Or with the kind of quality that he's played for? Manchester United, excellent start. Royal Antwerp, Reading, Burnley, West Ham, Stoke, Norwich, MK Dons, Cambridge United, and Soham Town Rangers. And you may wonder, how is a player with that kind of calibre not won a Ballon d'Or? His name is Luke Chadwick, but he has won a Premier League medal. And he made 25 appearances over the course of 5 years for Manchester United, and somehow sneaked his way into winning a medal in that period. And unfortunately, while he may not have won the Ballon d'Or, hopefully that kind of calibre is going to allow me to hopefully do a bit of a job in this debate.
Oh, well, I'm going for the footballing heavyweight, the goalkeeping maestro, the 10 times Golden Glove winner, that is Richard Ian Wright, who, he kicked off his career at Ipswich. He had a good 6 years at Portman Road. He racked up 240 league appearances. You think, okay, that's fair enough, but that's Ipswich. He then moved to Arsenal, and his one season there, he won the league, making 12 appearances in the absence of David Seaman. Before spending 5 years at Everton, moving to West Ham without playing a game, went to Southampton on loan, went back to Ipswich, Sheffield United, Ipswich again, and then this is where I think my main argument comes into this. After moving to Preston North End, where he also made no appearances, in the 4 years he spent at Man City, where they won 2 league titles, he made a humongous, monstrous 0 appearances. So you can see why I'm bringing him into play. They've had sub-keeper after sub-keeper coming in at the Etihad. Still didn't get a look in. I think they might as well just put a plaque on the subs bench with his name on it, which signifies his place in the team and the end of his career. So for that reason, I have to go for Richard Ian Wright. I don't know why I'm calling him by his full name, but
just gonna say, I feel like with Richard Wright, Pep may have finally found the solution to his goalkeeping problem.
So have England, for that matter.
Bring him out of retirement.
No, of course. I've found some stuff about Luke Chadwick. I've read a couple of articles. I'm convinced that he is genuinely, without exception, the most average human being I have ever seen in my life. He's average height, he's 5'11". He's played for the most average teams in the world. And he did a sort of interview where he's talking about when he signed for Cambridge for on like a permanent basis. He was speaking about his debut before it happened. His debut was against Welling. I didn't know Welling was a football team. But he was making... And he said, and I quote, "I remember coming on in a Champions League quarter-final against Bayern Munich. That was quite a nerve-wracking and incredible experience. But Tuesday is bigger." He's just the most average man.
Can I just say, he's still won more Premier League titles than Steven Gerrard.
Oh, there's a joke that no one was expecting.
And yet you're complaining that I'm not creative. Can we also just preface the fact he thinks Tuesdays are bigger? Can we just acknowledge the fact we're recording? Oh no, we're not. Damn it! It's a Wednesday.
Unlucky.
Oh, damn it!
Even if it were Tuesday, that wouldn't have been funny.
But guess what, Luke Chadwick? In another 6 days' time.
It's your time to shine, Luke.
Right, so what do you want to... I'm finding out where Welling is. He's piqued my curiosity now.
Does no one actually want to just argue against anyone?
We're not even debating it.
No.
We're just taking the piss.
Alright, while actually doing that, I'll have a little hack at Adi Adier, obviously metaphorically speaking. What is it, an idea? There we go. Finally started yodeling. He actually, when he went to Middlesbrough after being at Arsenal, he actually did alright for them. He got a few crucial goals, a couple of crackers in there, if I remember correctly. So I think...
in 3 years.
What, Middlesbrough?
Yeah.
Yeah. I said a few.
That's not great.
Maybe not. How many appearances did he make?
I'll have I think it was somewhere in the 70s. 1 second.
While Chris is just having that little interlude.
Yeah. 78 appearances.
Okay, before you speak, Alex, I'll just say that, Adier made 78 appearances. Richard Wright wasn't even good enough to make any appearances in that.
I feel like that made because he didn't make any appearances. It's slightly harsh to say he was the worst because he wasn't given a bloody chance.
Well, he still won the league at Arsenal.
Yeah, it's fair. What did he say he made? 10, 11?
He made 12 appearances, but that was out of necessity because Seaman was injured.
You're not going to be beating Seaman in goal, are you?
But, go on. I was going to make a Seaman joke, but I won't. Beating Seaman out.
Yeah.
Go on, Laffrey, just move. What were you going to say?
How many years did he spend at Arsenal?
Is that Wenger's sex tape?
Oh, Chris, right. No.
How many years did he spend at Arsenal?
1.
Okay, so
Chris, I'm trying to take you. I'm trying to tell you average facts here.
I'm talking. You don't.
That's my line.
That's alright. That can be sorted out. Right. So glad we got that sorted. So some more average facts about Luke Chadwick.
The subject of this episode: creativity.
Chris, I'm talking. You don't. So So just another. So I mentioned that Luke Chadwick thought playing against Welling was bigger than playing against Bayern Munich. Welling are currently in the National League South. For reference, Solihull Moors, from our little place, they're in the National League. They're a division above Welling.
Yeah.
And apparently,
it's called.
So I mean, I don't know. Welling National. Pretty big game, to be fair. I'm not even trying to win anymore. I'm just stunned by how average Chadwick is. I'm going to find out he has a 5.5-inch penis in a minute.
Wait, that's average.
Sorry to Josh.
Joking, I've got no issues in that department. Hey, crack on.
I feel like the fact that Ali Adier ended up winning the league as an invincible is just additionally insulting compared to both your players.
I mean, you can yodel his name. Try yodeling Luke Chadwick.
I don't think the fact...
Yodeling's not an average enough thing for Luke Chadwick to do.
I don't think that the fact that he was in the invincible side in itself means that he's the worst player. It just means that everyone else around him was just far, far better. Surely.
Yeah, but the fact that he was able to warrant a medal that crowned him as an invincible is just insulting to me.
Blame Wenger.
Blame Wenger.
I'm pretty sure that Richard Wright. I think Richard Wright's replacement for sub goalkeeper was Rami Shaban. I'm pretty sure, or if not him, then it was Stuart Taylor. One of the two. Either way, not positive.
Better than Taibbi.
Should we just forget that we're meant to be debating and just draw this to a close?
I just want to say, I think to be fair, it's quite impressive, regardless of how poorly Luke Chadwick or Ali Adier might have actually played. It's quite impressive that we actually could have had the exact same role at Manchester City. Or was it Arsenal that Richard Wright won it with? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that we could have had basically the same role as Richard Wright and still won the Premier League. Like, that's quite impressive.
You know how, Josh, you mentioned with the worst club owners, how there was that sort of graph of the Venky's time at Blackburn. I feel like that graph could also be used to summate Luke Chadwick's career starting off with United.
That's so true. Can I say after talking about Wenger in and out, Carl Oyston's number plate now has a whole new meaning.
Oh no!
Oh dear!
I don't want to know what goes on in the back.
Like
of that
father,
car.
like son.
Fake taxi. Who knows?
We know what goes on in the back of the car. It's Adam Johnson and.
Only round the back of a Chinese though. That part's important.
You do have to preface any sort of car-related incident with behind the Chinese restaurant.
I feel like I should probably wrap up proceedings around this point, because we're not really getting much debating. Yeah. We're just bashing each of our picks and saying how boring they are. So
how spectacularly average.
Luke Chadwick cried when he scored his first goal for Cambridge.
Please tell me you're joking. Please tell me that's a joke.
I've never really felt like that on the field before. It felt so surreal. I felt more emotional than anything I do at United. Even when we won at Wembley in the playoff final, I don't really cry, but I just couldn't stop. Why am I crying? I'm not really emotional. It just felt so good. It was emotional.
Is this the latest instalment in the 50 Shades series?
Why am I crying?
He should just write a book.
Oh
Just
my
Luke Chadwick, one man's journey from Old Trafford to the Abbey Stadium.
Oh, I have to wrap this up for our insanity. Oh. I was going to say just I've won the debate by default because yeah. Who do you think was the worst player to have won the Premier League? Do you think it was Jeremy Odia like Costa? Do you think it was Luke Chadwick like Lavery does? Or do you think like me that it was Richard Wright? Or maybe it's another player that you think is the worst player to have won the Premier League? Let us know in the comments below. I know I'm saying this in vain, but it's just routine. Alex will be taking over proceedings once again as of next week. But until then, thanks for watching. For more footballing content from In the Dugout, like, follow, share and subscribe. And don't forget to check out our Facebook, Instagram and Twitter pages.